The Yadirian officers howled with cruel laughter as the human exploration vessel floated into view, its tiny primitive form dwarfed by the sleek alien warships. But soon their arrogant chuckles turned to panicked screams as the TSS Endeavour revealed humanity's deadly surprise. On the bridge of the hulking YSS Imperium, Yadirian High Commander Regor crumpled the flimsy intelligence report in his clawed fist. The pathetic hairless apes of Earth believed themselves ready to traverse the stars in their minuscule metal cans. These so-called humans, according to the report, had only mastered the most rudimentary spaceflight technology, lagging centuries behind the vast Yadirian Empire. "Look at this ridiculous little ship." Regor thrust a hollow image of the TSS Endeavour at his second-in-command, Captain Zorn. "These humans fashion spaceships from scrap metal. They are infants crawling in the void." Zorn chuckled. "Shall I prepare a strike force to swat the Endeavour from the sky?" "No, I have a more entertaining idea." Regor opened a channel to the YSS Destructor, the Imperium's most formidable warship. Its ruthless commander, Korak, craved opportunities to unleash his arsenal. "Commander, intercept the human vessel. Capture the crew alive if you can. I need fresh specimens to dissect." "With pleasure." Korak licked his fangs. He would enjoy breaking the human's body and mind. On the compact bridge of the Endeavour, the mood was tense. Captain Ricky Ross gripped the arms of his command chair until his knuckles whitened. The Yadirian warship loomed on the view screen, bristling with enough firepower to reduce the humble Endeavour to molten slag. Lieutenant Jack Thompson broke the silence. "Sir, what are your orders?" Ricky met the eyes of each of his officers. They were outgunned 100 to 1, but he had faith in his crew of 50. Prepare to engage the destructor, ready the urchin mines and power up the phase cannons. It was time to show the galaxy what humans were made of. Ricky glared at the image of the alien ship. The Yadirians wanted to vivisect humans? They would choke on their hubris soon enough. The Terran Space Navy had equipped the Endeavour with experimental weapons powerful enough to blast the destructor into dust. The standoff had begun, one human ship against the mightiest vessel of the Yadirian fleet, with the lives of billions in the balance. Ricky said a silent prayer, not just for his crew, but for all humanity. They had to win, or Earth would burn. "All hands, battle stations." The viewscreen flickered to life, displaying the snarling visage of Commander Korak. "Captain Ross, your primitive ship is outmatched. Surrender now, and I may spare your crew from the vivisection table." Ricky leaned forward, his eyes narrowed. "Commander Korak, before we discuss terms, I have a few questions. What gives the Yadirian Empire the right to claim this system? The Antares sector has been designated as neutral territory by the Galactic Council." Korak slammed his fist against his command chair. "The Council is weak. The Yadirians take what we want, and we want your ship and your bodies for study." As Ricky kept Korak engaged, Lieutenant Thompson and Ensign Kim worked feverishly at their stations, fingers flying across holographic interfaces. They were modifying the pulse cannon, trying to boost its power to pierce the destructor's shields. "I've almost got it," Thompson muttered, sweat beading on his forehead. "Just a few more seconds." Ricky continued his verbal sparring with Korak. "You Yadirians always resort to violence and conquest. Have you ever considered diplomacy, or are you too primitive for that?" Korak roared with rage, his claws raking the air. "Enough, you will surrender or be destroyed." At that moment, Thompson gave Ricky a quick nod. The pulse cannon was ready. Ricky cut the communication link and barked, "Fire!" A blinding beam of blue-white energy erupted from the Endeavour's bow, slamming into the destructor's shields. For a moment, nothing happened. Then the shields flickered and died, unable to withstand the cannon's assault. The beam tore into the destructor's hull, ripping through armor and vital systems. Explosions blossomed across the Yadirian ship as its engines and weapons arrays were reduced to molten slag. On the destructor's bridge, Korak howled with disbelief and fury. "Return fire! Destroy that human filth!" But the destructor's targeting systems couldn't lock onto the Endeavour. The human ship's experimental stealth technology rendered it virtually invisible to sensors. Ricky pressed the advantage. Launch missiles, full spread. A dozen high-yield warheads leapt from the Endeavour's launch tubes, streaking towards the crippled destructor. The missiles detonated against the ship's ravaged hull, tearing through decks and bulkheads. The destructor listed to one side, venting atmosphere and debris. Korak's face contorted with hatred. This isn't over, human. You've made a grave mistake. Ricky allowed himself a grim smile. All right, people, let's get out of here before they... A sudden explosion rocked the Endeavour, throwing the crew from their seats. Alarms blared as damage reports flooded in. "Sir, we've been boarded," Ensign Kim shouted over the chaos. "Yadarian soldiers are in the engineering deck." Ricky cursed under his breath. The Yadarians must have launched a boarding shuttle while the Endeavour was focused on the destructor. The bridge doors hissed open, revealing a hulking Yadarian warrior in black armour, a vicious-looking blade in each hand. "I am Sergeant Rax," he growled, "and I claim this ship for the Empire." Ricky stepped forward, activating his prototype exoskeleton with a thought. The suit, a marvel of human engineering, encased his body in a shell of reinforced titanium. "Not today, Sergeant." Rax charged, his blades flashing. Ricky met him head-on, the exoskeleton enhancing his strength and speed. They clashed in a whirlwind of steel and sparks, human ingenuity pitted against Yadarian ferocity. Throughout the Endeavour, the human crew fought hand-to-hand against the Yadarian boarders, using every weapon at their disposal. They knew that this battle, fought in the cramped corridors of their ship, would decide not just their fates, but the fate of Earth itself. Sparks flew as Ricky and Rax clashed, their blades a blur of motion. Ricky's exoskeleton suit gave him an edge in strength and speed, but Rax was a seasoned warrior, his technique honed by decades of combat. As they fought, Lieutenant Thompson's voice crackled over the comm. "Captain, we've sealed off the engineering deck. The Yadarian boarding party is contained." Ricky grunted in acknowledgement, his focus never wavering from the duel. He pressed his advantage, driving Rax back with a flurry of strikes. But Rax had a trick up his sleeve. With a snarl, he activated a hidden cybernetic implant, his muscles bulging with unnatural strength. He surged forward, his blades a whirlwind of death. Ricky found himself on the defensive, his suit's enhanced abilities barely keeping him alive. They were locked in a stalemate, neither able to gain the upper hand. In a desperate gambit, Ricky triggered the suit's experimental phase shift device. His body became intangible, passing through Rax's blades as if they were smoke. Before Rax could react, Ricky plunged his hand into the Yadarian's chest, his fingers closing around the warrior's heart. With a savage twist, he crushed the organ, and Rax crumpled to the deck, dead. Ricky staggered back, his suit's power levels drained by the phase shift. "Endeavour status report." Ensign Kim responded, her voice strained. "Boarding party neutralized, sir, but the destructor is coming about, weapons hot." Ricky made a split-second decision. Emergency jump to hyperspace, now. The Endeavour leapt into the swirling vortex of hyperspace, the crippled destructor falling behind. They had escaped, but at a cost. News of their victory spread like wildfire through the Terran colonies. The Endeavour's crew were hailed as heroes, their actions a rallying cry for humanity. The Terran Space Navy, once hesitant to engage the Yadarians directly, began to mobilize, emboldened by the knowledge that human ingenuity could level the playing field. But the celebration was short-lived. An urgent distress call from the Proxima Centauri colony shattered the brief moment of triumph. The colony was under heavy attack by a Yadarian invasion fleet, led by none other than High Commander Rhaegor himself. Ricky clenched his fists as he listened to the desperate pleas for help. The colony's defenses were crumbling, and the Endeavour was the closest ship capable of rendering aid. He turned to his crew, his eyes hard with determination. "Set course for Proxima Centauri. We're not letting those colonists face Rhaegor alone." As the Endeavour hurtled through hyperspace, Ricky knew that the fate of the colony, and perhaps the entire war effort, rested on their shoulders. They were heading into the fight of their lives, but they would face it together, as humans always had. The Endeavour burst from hyperspace, the swirling vortex dissipating behind it. As the view screen cleared, Ricky and his crew stared in horror at the carnage before them. The once thriving Terran colony lay in ruins, its towering skyscrapers reduced to smouldering rubble. Yadarian warships swarmed the skies, their weapons pounding the planet's surface with relentless fury. Explosions blossomed across the ravaged landscape as the invaders targeted civilian settlements and vital infrastructure. "My God," Ensign Kim whispered, her face pale. "We're too late." Ricky shook his head, his jaw set with grim determination. "No, we're not. We can still make a difference." He turned to Lieutenant Thompson. "Take a team down to the surface. Elite Marines, the best we've got. Infiltrate those Yadirian bastards and hit their command centers hard. Disrupt their coordination with the fleet." Thompson nodded, already moving towards the door. "Consider it done, Captain." As Thompson and his hand-picked team, including Ensign Kim, raced to the Endeavour's stealth shuttle, Ricky focused on the tactical display. The Yadarian fleet was vast, easily outnumbering and outgunning the Endeavour. A direct confrontation would be suicide. But Ricky had a plan. A desperate, audacious plan that just might turn the tide. "Helm, plot a course for the Yadarian flagship, full speed." The helmsman, a grizzled veteran named Harris, shot Ricky a surprised look. "Sir, we'll be flying right into their guns." "We'll use the stealth systems to slip past their defenses." Ricky's eyes narrowed as he zoomed in on the massive Yadarian dreadnought at the heart of the fleet, the YSS Imperium, Rieger's personal ship. "I'm going to board that flagship and take the fight to Rieger himself." Harris nodded, his fingers flying over the controls. The Endeavour surged forward, its advanced stealth technology rendering it all but invisible to the Yadirian sensors. As they closed in on the Imperium, Ricky suited up in his exoskeleton, the advanced armor encasing his body in a shell of strength and speed. He hefted a prototype plasma sword, its blade humming with barely contained energy. "When I give the signal, drop the stealth and fire everything we've got at the Imperium's shields. Give me an opening to board." The bridge crew nodded, their faces grim with determination. They knew the odds they faced, but they also knew what was at stake. The fate of the colony, of the entire war, hung in the balance. On the planet's surface, Lieutenant Thompson and his team moved like ghosts through the rubble-strewn streets. They planted explosives at key Yadarian command posts, their movements precise and deadly. As the charges detonated, the Yadarian forces fell into disarray, their coordination with the fleet above faltering. The Terran defenders, battered but unbroken, rallied and began to push back against their alien foes. Aboard the Imperium, alarms blared as the Endeavour dropped its stealth field and opened fire. The dreadnought's shields flared under the onslaught, weakening just enough for Ricky to make his move. He leapt from the Endeavour's airlock, his exoskeleton propelling him through the void. He slammed into the Imperium's hull, his plasma sword flashing as he carved open an entry point. Inside, Yadarian soldiers swarmed to meet him, their weapons spitting death. But Ricky was a whirlwind of destruction, his enhanced speed and strength making him more than a match for the alien warriors. He fought his way through the ship, a trail of broken bodies in his wake. His goal was clear, the bridge and High Commander Rhaegor. As he burst onto the bridge, Rhaegor spun to face him, shock and rage warring on the alien's face. "You dare!" the Yadarian leader snarled, drawing his own weapon. Ricky activated his plasma sword, its blade casting an eerie blue glow. "I dare," he said, his voice cold as space itself. "For Earth, for the Proxima Centauri colony, and for every life your kind has taken. Let's end this, Rhaegor. Here and now." The two leaders clashed, their blades flashing in a deadly dance. The fate of worlds hung in the balance as they fought, human ingenuity and determination pitted against Yadirian cruelty and aggression. On the bridge of the YSS Imperium, plasma swords clashed in a storm of sparks as Ricky and High Commander Rhaegor dueled with furious intensity. Ricky's exoskeleton enhanced his speed and power, but Rhaegor's natural Yadirian strength and cybernetic augmentations made him a formidable opponent. As they locked blades, Rhaegor snarled, his fangs bared. "You fight well for a human, but you cannot stop the inevitable. The Yadirian Empire will conquer your worlds, one by one." Ricky strained against Rhaegor's sword, his suit's servos whining. Why? Why this relentless aggression? "Because we must," Rhaegor roared. He shoved Ricky back, his eyes blazing. "Our homeworld is dying, poisoned by centuries of industry. We need new planets to ensure our survival. Your kind stands in our way." Ricky circled Rhaegor, his plasma sword humming. "I understand your desperation, but I can't condone the slaughter of innocents. There has to be another way." "There is no other way." Rhaegor lunged, his blade a blur. Ricky parried the strike, then countered with a swift series of slashes. Rhaegor's armor sparked and sizzled as Ricky's sword found weak points. The Yadirian staggered, his defenses crumbling. Sensing victory, Ricky pressed his attack, his suit's enhanced strength driving Rhaegor back. The Yadirian sword arm faltered, and Ricky's blade sheared through the cybernetic limb, severing it at the elbow. Rhaegor howled in pain and rage. With his remaining hand, he slammed a fist onto a hidden control panel. "If I die, I'm taking you with me." Alarms blared as a computerized voice announced, "Self-destruct sequence initiated. 5 minutes to detonation." Ricky's eyes widened. The Imperium's reactor core was powerful enough to vaporize the entire Terran fleet. He had to end this now. With a final desperate lunge, Ricky drove his plasma sword through Rhaegor's chest. The Yadirian convulsed, his lifeblood sizzling on the blade. Ricky wrenched his sword free and sprinted for the nearest escape pod. He slammed the hatch shut, just as the pod rocketed away from the doomed flagship. Seconds later, the YSS Imperium exploded in a blinding flash of light. The shockwave slammed into the Yadirian fleet, scattering the invasion force like leaves in a hurricane. On the planet's surface, Lieutenant Thompson and his team fought desperately against the Yadirian ground forces. Explosions rocked the ruined cityscape as the saboteurs detonated charges at key command centers. But the Yadirians kept coming, heedless of their losses. Thompson and his men were forced into a fighting retreat, cut off from their extraction point. Ensign Kim, hefting a satchel full of explosives, shouted over the chaos, "I'll draw their fire, get the others to safety." Before Thompson could protest, Kim sprinted towards the enemy lines, hurling grenades and firing her rifle. The Yadirians turned their weapons on her, their shots stitching the ground at her feet. Kim disappeared into a shattered building, the Yadirians in close pursuit. Moments later, a massive explosion ripped through the structure, the shockwave hurling Yadirian bodies through the air. Thompson choked back a sob, knowing that Kim had sacrificed herself to buy them time. He led the survivors to the extraction point, where Terran dropships waited to ferry them to safety. In orbit, the remnants of the Yadirian fleet struggled to regroup, their coordination shattered by the loss of the Imperium. Terran reinforcements poured into the system, their ships fresh and fully armed. The battle raged for hours, the void lit by the fire of exchanging broadsides and the silent flash of venting atmosphere. But in the end, the Yadirians were driven back, their fleet reduced to a handful of battered ships limping away into hyperspace. The Proxima Centauri colony was saved, but at a terrible cost. The planet's surface was a ruin of shattered cities and cratered battlefields. Thousands of Terran lives had been lost, the dead outnumbering the living. Ricky, his exoskeleton battered and scorched, picked his way through the rubble. His crew had survived, but Ensign Kim's loss weighed heavily on them all. The Endeavour's crew were hailed as heroes, their actions instrumental in turning the tide. But as Ricky looked out over the devastated colony, he knew that this victory was only the beginning. The Yadirians, driven by the need to survive, would not stop until they had conquered the galaxy. The war had only just begun, and Ricky and his crew would be on the front lines, fighting for the survival and freedom of the human race. You have reached the end of the story. If you enjoyed this story and want to support us, please leave a like and subscribe to our channel. And for every comment that says 88, I will heart every single one of them. Thank you for your time.